Hello, assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to Restructuring to Attract Sustainable Investment and Customers in the New World Order, or as some people might call it, what the hell just happened and can we fix it? And the answer is yes, we can, as you'll find out. I'm Raj Datta, a broadcaster and journalist specializing in travel, and it's my great pleasure to be the moderator for this event. I hope I find you well and in good spirits and enjoying all the events at this virtual ATM. It's good, isn't it, through platforms like this to realize that the world out there does still exist and does care about the future of travel to sustain millions of livelihoods and for the betterhood of human civilization. Now, this virtual summit will discuss sustainable investment measures for the Middle East travel and tourism sector and consider strategies to restore travelers' confidence and move forward post-pandemic. Or as some might say, what the hell happened and how can we fix it? Again, we hopefully have the answers. It's brought to you by the ITIC, the International Tourism and Investment Conference, and its chairman, Taleb Rifai, will say hello very soon. Before he addresses you, let me just run through the agenda for this session. First, I'll have a brief overview of the new normal with the former president and CEO of Jumeirah Hotels in Dubai and Gerard Lawless and Dr. Rifai. We want their thoughts on the new possibilities that arise out of this unprecedented shutdown. We'll then have a panel discussion on how several of the big players from some of the Emirates and Saudi Arabia plan to kickstart sustainable investment in the region. That'll be followed by a second panel on repositioning your business for success when the pandemic comes under control. A top panel of experts will advise on branding, the importance of perception, the influences, uses of them, psychology, and much more. It will be invaluable, I promise you. And then the open session will close and there'll be a breakout, there will be breakout one-to-one meetings with a speed networking session with destinations and project owners engaging with investors, which will last for an hour. So without further ado, can I please welcome Dr. Taleb Rifai, Chairman of the ITIC and former Secretary General of the UN WTO, to say a few words of welcome. Taleb.
Thank you so much, Rajan. You're always so great, so gracious. Dear friends, we live today in unusual and difficult times. Who would have imagined 3 months ago that we would have been holding our conference in this manner? We're living in a world today of uncertainty prompted so much fear and panic that no one knows what tomorrow would bring. Right from the start, my dear friends, governments had stepped in aggressively, though in varying degrees. The world and the governments of the world have so far put all their energies and resources into containing the disease. Medically, maybe because understandably life and health are human priorities. However, the world quickly is waking up now. In less than a few weeks, began to discover that life post-containment is equally important, if not even more important. It's life with dignity, prosperity, and hope. There is a great need, therefore, to indulge into economic recovery immediately, today, not tomorrow, to restore confidence and trust in the minds and the hearts of the people. This conference, titled Restructuring and Attracting Sustainable Investments and Customers in the New World Order, comes therefore at a very timely. It is for this that WTM, the largest and most significant tourism gathering in the world, joins hands with ICIT, the most impactful gathering for investment tourism, to bring you this conference together. We all need to start now looking at the day after, at ways and means of bringing some of sense of normality, of trust and confidence in the world we live in. Investment is the most convincing and effective confidence builder, without doubt. If you invest in something, you have confidence in that thing. This is why it's an important conference, not only because of the subject matter, because of its timing. I'm sure we're all going to come out of this conference a little more confident as to where we're heading. Hope is the name of the game, my dear friends. It is an important factor in our lives today, for there is an opportunity that comes out of every crisis. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Taleb. Thanks very much indeed. Stay with us. because we're now going to have a look at the future prospects for the Gulf and Middle East tourism in the post-COVID era, with specific regard to investment. And Talib and I are joined now by Gerald Lawless, WTTC Ambassador, ITIC Director, and Advisory Board Member of Dubai Expo 20, now 2021. Gerald.
2020, then.
A time
2020.
for... Yeah, one of the two. A time for gloom or optimism, Gerald?
Well, thank you very much, Rajan, and well said, Talib. Thank you for those words. No, I think very much, I'd like to think surely it's a time also for opportunity. And that's something that investors will always look for. And definitely they are out there. And they will be in the future, they are now. And I think our industry will bounce back. And how we make it bounce back is so important. We've been discussing in many of the task force webinars with the WTTC exactly how that should happen. And I'm really very, very happy to see how Gloria Guevara and her colleagues at WTTC have worked so hard to liaise with governments, especially through the process of the G20 meeting with all the tourism ministers. And of course, in Saudi Arabia in November of this year, the G20 will take place, and hopefully it will physically take place as well. And I feel personally that this is also an opportunity connected to investment, is how we relaunch and how we reboot our industry. One very important part of it, in my opinion, is how we take the environmental issues along with us, not to be looked at like that we're diametrically opposed. No, we are not. This industry does an awful lot of good for sustainability, both social sustainability and even environmental sustainability. We see now on the BBC elephants being shot by poachers in game parks where there's nobody to bring guests in, and photographers and people doing the right things in game parks. Bad things happen when you don't have tourism. Tourism is a very important aspect of what we do in life, how we travel, and how we interact with each other. And I believe coupled with that is definitely investment opportunity within our industry, particularly I think in the hotel sector, and we will see this developing and evolving over the coming weeks and months.
Gerald, tell me, how robust do you think the Middle East is, especially in terms of its travel and hospitality sector? Because it's actually been less affected by COVID than much of the world, and some people might say it's actually in a good place.
Yes, I agree. I think actually the Middle East generally, particularly the country that we're in, the United Arab Emirates, has been extremely effective in containing the disease. The United Arab Emirates already has upwards of 2 million tests have already been carried out within this small country of 9 million people. And that's something to be very, very pleased about. And that, I think, leads into what everybody says and everybody looks for, is to have these corridors. Saudi Arabia has just an incredible product, and they're advertising saying, we are still here, we've not gone away, we will be here for you, so please do come. I think there's opportunity, for example, for the United Arab Emirates eventually, when the authorities decide it's appropriate to do so, that we could look at these corridors. And I'm sure with all the speakers you have today representing all of these countries, they will give your viewers and listeners a very good insight into what's happening. For example, if the UAE and Oman could have a corridor, how great that would be. And I'm very, very hopeful that these corridors of countries, even UAE and Greece, for example, is a possibility, which would get the airline industry moving as well.
Everyone's talking about bubbles and corridors, aren't they? Talib, there's a big move, and we're going to hear more about this, towards digitizing economies. And that means hopefully as well training for, and that's investment, but it's also training for the so-called low-skilled, the older people, perhaps unemployed people. Do you see that as a positive move, a very important move?
Absolutely, absolutely, Rajan. Training is not just for the people that are not trained before. We need to retrain our people, because our world after Corona is not going to be the same as the world before Corona. Our jobs, our responsibilities are going to be different. We're going to have to train people how to convey and transmit confidence into their customers. This is a very special training. The workers themselves have to be protected as well. So it's important to have it two ways. This new training program must be something at a national level that every country must embark on. If I may say something about what Gerald said, just two quick points. One is the G20 meeting in Saudi Arabia. I believe Saudi Arabia can take a lead in international level in doing that, because international organizations, let's say WTTC is an exception in this regard. They're taking their responsibility very seriously in connecting with governments, trying to facilitate things. But other than that, I see a vacuum at the international level, at the regional level even. The EU is in shambles. The UN altogether does not, we don't hear a voice of them. The Arab League is not there. The African Union is not there. So what we need to do is bring together, build together from bottom up, a new world order. And Saudi Arabia can take the leading part in this, because the timing of the G20, the G20 as a global forum could be one that replaces all of this vacuum that we're living in. That's number one. Number two, I want to comment a little bit about the bubbles and the corridors. Bubbles and corridors are fine, but we need to be very clear about our protocols. What are we going to do there? It's important. The work that WTC is embarking on. It's very, very important. Without clear protocols, cannot build any corridors or any bubbles, so to speak. We've created something called Corona Resilience Zone, CRZ. It's a concept that we'll be explaining as we go along in this conference. I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. Thank you so much, John.
Gerald, you're a hotels man. Let's look at the kind of experience and how destinations are going to have to adapt in certain ways post-COVID, if you like. What measures do you think will have to be brought into hotels? How can you see that developing?
Well, I mentioned the other day, and I still say that I think it's been very, very encouraging to see that, for example, my previous company, the Jumeirah Hotel Group here in Dubai, have worked with Bureau Veritas to bring in what they call the Bureau Veritas safeguard system, which again is a protocol, a set of rules, a set of audited activities to ensure that guests are going to experience the most hygienic situation possible, and one that will keep them safe and that they will then feel comfortable with. We hear about Marriott and about Hilton and about Accor also having their own systems of getting across to the guests that they're taking the situation very, very seriously to try to contain any potential infection. And they're doing that by introducing these protocols. I think particularly to see it laid down like with an independent organization who has their own reputation to be concerned about is a very strong way forward, a good way forward. One of the areas that I do feel is a little bit concerning, especially when we talk about the environmental issues. Hotels generally had worked very hard to get rid of single-use plastic. And now it looks like a lot of the efforts to contain the virus is actually reintroducing single-use plastic. And again, I think the recyclability of these plastics are so important, right down to maybe now you get plastic glasses in your bathroom when you stay in a hotel rather than a glass. So I think this will help a lot. Another area I think also where we can see a lot of light, a glimmer of light towards the end of the tunnel is when we see domestic tourism developing. I'm sure this year in the United Kingdom, there will be incredibly high levels of staycations. We see it here in the United Arab Emirates. And again, a lot of my colleagues are represented on our panels this morning, plus Ras Al Khaimah, for example, that has been very, very effective in attracting many, many guests to come from within the United Arab Emirates to stay. And this will be the same in Saudi Arabia. It will continue throughout the region. I do hope that in a place like Egypt, for example, and Jordan, they will be able to avail of some similar possibilities. And I appreciate what Talib is saying regarding the bubbles and the corridors. Yes, there has to be protocols. Yes, there needs to be international coordination on that. But in my opinion, yes, they need to happen as well.
Just final word to you, Talib, and that is really about the ITIC. Can you explain perhaps to people who don't know that much about it, what its role is and what you hope it will enable destinations, regions to do in the future?
I just tried to indicate that in my introductory remarks, because investment is the ultimate expression of trust and confidence. If you invest somewhere, you trust that place. So it's very important to look at means and ways of investment. Not because investment is important economically, which it is, definitely, but because it conveys and communicates trust and confidence in the place you're investing in. That's why International Tourism Investment Conference is an important element here. and to put hands in hands with WTM. Read here is also very, very important. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
And may I also endorse that and say that also the ITIC, we will have our own webinar on June the 10th, Talib, right?
Yeah, right. That's right. That's right. June the 10th, we have our own thing. Of course, it's an even comprehensive conference as well. Our meetings are going to be working that way now. That's the new normal.
The new normal.
So to speak.
Yeah. I think we're going to hear that phrase an awful lot. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Talib, we're going to see you later at the end of the conference, I believe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's go now to our first panel, when we'll get some insights into what is on offer in tourism and investment in the Middle East, amongst the GCC countries in particular. And I want to know how much the COVID situation has changed the paradigm, really. So let's find out, what are the initiatives being taken to revive the travel and tourism industry and to secure sustainable investment in the region? We have key players from the investment and tourism boards in the Emirates of Dubai, Sharjah, Ajman, and from Saudi Arabia, aspiring itself to be a big tourism hub in the region. They're going to tell us more. And to open the session, however, let me first welcome Mr. Nicholas Mayer from PwC, who I believe they've conducted intensive research into the post-COVID outlook for investment and tourism in the Middle East. Nicholas, what are the main findings here? Is this a once-in-a-generation opportunity?
It can be, yes. Good afternoon, first of all. Yes, it can be indeed. So I think we've spent sufficient time also, of course, in discussing all the horrible impacts and the very large negative externalities that have been created for this. But indeed, if we manage to, as you said at your introduction, if we manage to get through this, it creates for us a number of opportunities that we haven't had in the same extent previously. So those are opportunities to basically change our touristic organizations, mainly in a digital space, but perhaps also in the way that we run them more sustainably. It creates opportunities of how we engage with our visitors, with our guests, that we have a much longer period of interaction with them, primarily also in pre-arrival to post-departure. It has the ability that we build more trust with them, and therefore have also perhaps the opportunity to, based on that trust, transact with them commercially more often. And then lastly, we have a window of opportunity, but nothing more than that, of anchoring aspects of sustainability in our industry that haven't really fully taken anchorage in it before. And I'm always very cautious with this. So there is a large hope and a justified hope that indeed we will finally be able to implement and anchor within our industry aspects of sustainability that are not just in the environmental aspect, but also the connection to our local communities, the relationship we have with the staff that we are entrusted to take care of. So a large part of sustainability. And I think that there's a window of opportunity where also guests or potential guests have been sensitized to this issue and therefore may be willing to prefer organizations where credibly they're showing that they're taking care of these. But it is just that. It's just a window of opportunity. We have an equal risk of forgetting very quickly and going back to the old model, for better or worse. And the way it will turn out depends on what we want it to be there and how much effort we put behind it.
Let's talk about certain categories that have come up as a result of this. And I'm intrigued by Generation Z. Tell me who they are and how they're going to be important in the future.
Well, they are basically our youngest adults currently and older teenagers, if you so will. And they are, of course, the true first generation that has entirely grown up in a well-established digital environment and therefore have different attributes in the way that they procure information, in the way they learn, in the way they interact, in the way they transact commercially. And they are a very, very cool segment. I'm sometimes almost, even though we are talking about Gen Z, we are talking about this topic, I'm sometimes a little bit hesitant to stereotype them too much because they are by no means a homogeneous group. It depends on personalities, on cultures, etc. But fundamentally, they are a generation that needs to be engaged differently than even the previous generations, from baby boomers to X, Y. I'm not sure what we're going to do after Z, by the way. Where's going on?
Who knows? We'll worry about that when it comes. And the other thing is, of course, that the main international source markets for the Middle East are India and China. Now, where do you see them, their situation in terms of outbound travel? How confident are they? How soon are they going to be coming out here?
So they will come at it. They behave no different than any other segment that we may find attractive. They will come again, first of all, of course, when they are infrastructure allowed. So this means flights and borders and visas, etc. But beyond that, they will come when they have built the level of trust that they believe is necessary for them to take the risk of traveling again. And that trust is more complex than one might think at first level. So this is almost a Maslow's pyramid, if you will. So first and foremost, it's the trust that the destination will take care of my health, right? I think we're very rapidly getting there. And as Gerald has said, I mean, here in the UAE and in other places, I just haven't been able to visit other places. But what I observe in the UAE, I mean, many governments have done a phenomenal job in creating a credible, solid, robust, and by the way, by and large, unilaterally supported environment for that. So the trust in my health. But there's also the trust in the integrity of my finances, right? I mean, there's a lot of damage has been done for people that didn't get reimbursed for their trips, that didn't get cancellation fees or did get cancellation fee, etc. So it's also trust that should something happen that prevents me traveling in the future, that they also have a solution available to them that makes sure at least that they don't have a total write-off on their vacation money, which is going to be more limited initially for many people. And thirdly, it's the trust in the integrity of the experience, right? If I am happy to come health-wise, financially able to come and happy to do so, and then I arrive here and you give me a stripped down version of what it used to be. So basically, pre-COVID minus a lot of things, without new things, then I'm not coming, right? So when we have these three things credibly put in place and properly communicated to them, then they will come. Quite frankly, Chinese, it doesn't matter who. It may be that the prioritization is different for different markets, but that's what needs to happen. And quite frankly, it seems to be happening quite well so far.
Just finally, before we turn to Dubai, let me ask you, I mean, in terms of investment, real estate prices are pretty good at the moment. They're pretty cheap, aren't they? In that sense, it's a good time for investment, isn't
it? Absolutely. I mean, so of course, it's a good time for investment opportunistically if you are able to transact right now. But I think the underlying message is even more important is many of the primary real estate markets here in the region, be it in Saudi or UAE or Oman or other ones, are phenomenally dynamic economies. And yes, they've taken a hit like every single country in the world right now, but the underlying promise, not just promise, but the underlying demonstrated capability to ramp up again and go beyond of what used to be before, be it in tourism or somewhere else, in this region makes one very confident in this one. Yeah, so if you can, do.
Okay, Nicholas, thank you very much for the time being. Stay with us. So let me turn now to Dubai and His Excellency Izam Kasim, CEO, Dubai Department of Tourism and Commerce Marketing. Hello. Welcome. I'd like to firstly briefly run through how you're reacting to the consequences of the pandemic and whether it's changed any of your investment and project strategies for Dubai travel and tourism. I mean, I already note that Emirates, for example, are flying to 9 cities within the region, I think, and business and leisure activities in Dubai have suddenly opening up again. You also have, as I mentioned, Expo 2020 or 2021, whatever you want to call it. It's called 2020, isn't it? Even though it's next year happening. So tell me, what will tourism and travel look like in the future in Dubai? What's going on?
First of all, assalamu alaikum to all, and good afternoon, and Rajan and Nick, thank you so much for having us. I mean, we usually look forward to this time of the year to having everyone physically here in Dubai and meeting face to face. It's something we, all of us in this industry, look forward to. But it's good to see that our resilience shows that, you know, we're committed. And ATM, thank you to them for having this virtual meeting, bringing this all together. To answer your question, I think, first of all, I want to go back to a point. I don't want to leave it open. After Generation Z is Generation Alpha, by the way. It's already there. So
thank you.
No, so we need to be prepared for them as well. And actually, that brings me to the point of how we've been looking at it in Dubai. COVID, yes, it's a unique situation that the whole world finds itself in. But as you know, in the financial model of things and the economies, there's always an up and a down. And I think we always have to be prepared for the different phases. The first phase of what Dubai did, as most countries did as well, which is, you know, try to bring the safety, security, you know, under control, make sure that everyone's looked after. That's paramount, right? And we were making sure that that's being done. But at the same time, we started to slowly look at the potential, because at the end, from the tourism sector, for Dubai especially, it's one of the biggest contributors to Dubai's GDP. So we wanted to make sure that we still stay top of mind. Dubai worked its way up over the recent years from being number 7 most visited city in the world to number 5 and maintaining number 4 while closing in and creeping into that number 3 position. We saw a huge growth in 2019. It was over 5% growth, given again, it was not an easy time. We're forgetting it because the first 6 months of this year was COVID. But again, the beginning, January and February months of this year, also we saw over 4% growth as well. So we were well underway to even break those records. However, we are where we are. So what we did was we immediately started to ensure that first the safety was under control. Then we started to send message out to the world, to the fans of Dubai, to the people who were looking forward to visiting Dubai, to show them we're with you. You know, we're hand in hand. We're all together in this. And this is the Dubai, and it'll still be here, still waiting for you. You know, and we look forward to welcoming you in the near future. And that quickly transitioned into our next campaigns, which we have recently launched, which is a Till We Meet Again campaign, telling the people that these are the things that you are used to seeing or we're looking forward to seeing. And again, we are getting ready and preparing and highlighting the hygiene measures from the private and the public sector. All the efforts are being put into place, really gearing up towards what people are looking forward to. We anticipate that everyone, including ourselves, are now getting to a stage where we're anxiously searching as in when can we start traveling soon as well, you know, as is the rest of the world. So we want to make sure that we are sending out the right messages to them. After all, there's a lot of efforts being put into place. Slowly, as you mentioned, Dubai is opening up to taking a staged approach to normalcy. And again, as Dr. Talib mentioned earlier, it could be the new norm, and which is absolutely fine. It's something that we all need to be aware of and be very clear about and conscious about, and not expect to pick up where we left off last year, right? We need to be aware that things might have changed and it might gradually have an impact as well. Today, travel will be seen, again, this is my hypothesis, as a much bigger luxury than it was in the past. So the disposable income and how people will be managing the disposable income will be very different than it was prior to March. So I think with that in mind, how we make it easier for people to get the right information about what they can do in Dubai, how they can access Dubai, and when they can access Dubai is something we need to be holding them by the hand and taking them through this journey with them and ensuring that we do not forget the safety and hygiene measures of Dubai, even for the near future, because that will still be top of mind for people wanting to travel, making sure that we're working closely with all the partners in the industry. I'm talking about the airlines, the hotels, as well as the trade globally, who will be working together with you to ensure that ultimately the guest who's thinking of coming to Dubai gets the best experience and is absolutely certain and relaxed mentally, knowing that they are in a place where they don't have to worry about anything else.
Can I just ask you this thing? I mean, retail has always been a huge part of the Dubai offer, if you like. You had huge plans, because when I was there last, for construction of new areas of Dubai. A lot of that was going on. You are essentially an urban destination, and people are going to be, aren't they going to be slightly worried about urban destinations? How are you going to reassure them about that? Because of the proximity of people, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, of course. I think, look, I mean, yes, the urban offering or the shopping offering was one of the main pillars in the past. However, over the past few years, we've actually started to make sure that people realize Dubai has a much wider offering. So the propositions of Dubai go well beyond just the urban side. Yes, there's still a demand for that, so we're maintaining it, but there's a lot more to offer. So the beach aspect of things, the desert aspect of things, there's a lot on the historical districts and the museums and that part of it as well. So there is really a lot for people to do in Dubai. However, when you look at the urban side of it, the size of the malls themselves and the number of malls that Dubai have on offer, I mean, it's done in a way where you can still be able to create relatively comfortable spaces amongst people as well. And as I mentioned before, when people are going to start to travel again, I think even the way that they'll be looking at their next trips will be very different than they would have looked at it in the past. And again, this is the part where it is our role to ensure that working with the industry, we are keeping everybody well informed as the variety of things that Dubai has on offer. And even when it comes to retail, the offers in itself is quite varied and the options are quite vast.
The fact that you are becoming such a major hub in terms of as an airport hub, if you like, because of Emirates and because of the airport, how much is that going to factor into the future of Dubai and how it progresses?
The airport has always been the heart of the tourism industry for us because, again, geographical location of Dubai, being literally the heart of the world map, it gave us a great opportunity for people to be traveling through Dubai and connecting to the rest of the world. And obviously, Emirates Airlines, as well as Fly Dubai, they play a very, very strong role in that front. So we work very closely with them to ensure that we are creating any opportunity that's given to us where people can stop over, experience Dubai firsthand, maybe for the first time, and eventually create repeat visitors out of them as well. But that doesn't mean that we stop there. We also work closely with Dubai Airport and their plans and making sure that we are as welcoming and as accommodating to all of the international carriers from around the world to ensure, again, Dubai is accessible as possible. And that doesn't just look at the leisure part of tourism, but we also look at the business side of tourism as well. Dubai has been growing year on year, becoming really the international hub for business events, for conferences, global conferences and exhibitions. And again, that is something that's been growing alongside the leisure side. And also it contributes quite heavily because a lot of people come to Dubai for the first time to attend one of these events and end up coming back again the next time with their family, with their friends, and eventually coming back on vacations to the destination as well. So the airport will always be at the core of Dubai's offering.
Just quick, very lastly, and briefly if you can, what investment opportunities will there be in the future in Dubai? Where do you see that going?
If I just wrap it up with everything that we've been discussing earlier as well, Dubai has got a lot of I would say multinational companies, a lot of the Fortune 500 companies who have established their headquarters in Dubai or the regional headquarters in Dubai, and that is something significant. I think it's not many people are aware of how many of those companies exist, and I think the fact of what Dubai has on offer for these businesses, the different kind of systems that are in place and the different free zones gives all of these companies an opportunity and the flexibility to be able to practice their business in a way that they feel comfortable, that's suitable for them as well. And I think also then look at the lifestyle offering of Dubai as a destination makes it very easy for people to relocate to Dubai to establish their businesses or to join these multinational companies as well. And that is going to be going forward even more important for us. And you will be seeing that a lot of efforts being made towards that part of the business because, again, if you look at the infrastructure that's in place and with the events that we have on offer, and with Expo, for example, right around the corner, it gives people a chance to really come and showcase and experience firsthand what they can do in Dubai, network and connect with people. And again, understand the ease of doing business over here and setting up business over here and setting up their livelihood over here. And also taking advantage of the relatively recently announced retirement visas and other such options that are now available in Dubai. It simply becomes an offer that's too good to refuse.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Issam, for the time being. Let's go to a nation that's Saudi Arabia, that's already undergoing a massive program of development and turning Saudi into an international tourism hub. I was there last year seeing Al Ula and Jeddah. And we have Majid Al Ghanim, who is the managing director of the Ministry of Investment in Saudi Arabia, I believe, who should be coming up. Is he there? Yes, you are. I can see you.
I'm here, Rajan. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, very well.
Now, you already had this huge 2030 vision in place before COVID. You've got the G20 summit coming up. How much of all that momentum has been disrupted, and how are you adapting to the post-COVID climate for tourism?
Well, of course, you know that this pandemic has affected the whole world, and Saudi Arabia is not different from any other country. But then the momentum of work that we've seen with all of the government entities and everyone that is working towards and looking forward to post-COVID-19 has shown us great hope for things that will be much better after the pandemic. Now, we know that tourism is one of the most affected sectors, and we believe that all of the governmental incentives that have put in place and the stimulus packages and all of that shows us that we are committed to our goals. We are committed to the vision, and hopefully things will go back to normal and much better than before.
So tell me, what kind of projects are you still looking for investment in? What incentives are you offering?
Well, everyone has been hearing a lot about the projects and the destinations that are coming up in Saudi Arabia, and to name a few, the Red Sea project, Qiddiya and Neom, Jeddah downtown, and all of these destinations are being developed. Infrastructure in place are being developed, and we think that things are looking brighter. We're seeing things that are moving ahead, and big interest from investors, whether they're local or international investors. We've seen a lot of interest during the period where everything has been locked down and the borders are closed, and we've been reached out by a lot of international investors asking for whether information about these destinations, asking us about plans and how can they align with the governmental plans post COVID-19. So these are showing us great the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're seeing that. And with all of this, we believe things will hopefully recover quicker than what we have expected at the beginning of the pandemic.
Now, I think one of the initiatives you've got going at the moment is for kind of domestic tourism, or trying to boost that a little bit. So getting Saudis to see their own country for the first time. I mean, how much of a change is that for Saudis, do you think?
It's a big change, and I think this is one of the main aspects of the national tourism strategy, is to capture the amounts spent out of Saudi Arabia, right? With the Saudis traveling abroad and the expenses that they're spending out of Saudi Arabia, to capture it within the country, and that's one of the things that we're looking at. And we're thankful to the Ministry of Tourism and the Saudi Commission of Tourism, working very hard to bring back that money into Saudi Arabia. Now, a lot of programs are happening. We're seeing a lot of programs coming up by the Ministry of Tourism, and we believe that it's really good. That will bring in not only the tourists to these destinations, but will also bringing confidence to investors to come in and invest in these areas as well.
I was listening to a colleague of yours from Saudi Arabia yesterday, and he was talking about how when it comes to investment in your own people, this whole move towards digitalization is going to be really good. So within the tourism industry, do you see that as a way of enabling people who are perhaps unemployed at the moment to get into an industry?
Well, I think we're very blessed with young, highly educated, digitally connected population. Now, that is something that we have to cope with. It's not an option. Not for us, not for the government, not for investors, whether current investors or future investors. This is something that has to happen, and we're also looking at all of the advancements that are happening with the Ministry of Communication in Saudi Arabia and all of their work that has been done, whether it's e-government or all of the infrastructure that is happening with the help of the private sector, of course, and that is showing us that we're here to cope, and we are here to. We're advancing really quickly, and also the investors are seeing that sense within the population that they're showing them that yes, we are going digital, yes, and then within the tourism industry as well, we're seeing that everywhere else in the world, not only in Saudi Arabia. That, a lot of things are moving digital, whether it's within the hotels or the tour operators or a lot of destinations are built on being fully digital. So yes, that is happening, and we are very excited about it.
I mean, you are a relative latecomer, and you come to the tourism world, but you've made a tremendous amount of progress very quickly, and you are very ambitious as a country. Tell me, is it about competing with the likes of Dubai, for example, to be an international hub, or is the aim to be complementary, to kind of work together with the other GCC countries?
Oh, thank you for adding that part to the question. Definitely, yes. We're looking at Dubai, any other, the UAE in general. Let's not talk about only about Dubai. The UAE in general, it has great destinations, Oman, Bahrain, and all of the neighboring countries. We're looking at them as complementing destinations to Saudi Arabia. But then when it comes to investments, of course, the FDI market is a competitive market. That we cannot fool anyone. It is a competitive market. But we would like to see all of the investments coming to Saudi Arabia, and this is what we're working for. We believe that we have the platform needed for investors to come into Saudi Arabia. We have the diverse offerings of destinations and things that we believe are very compelling, very attractive for investors to come and visit. In addition to the local, the regional power, the buying power that is available in Saudi, we think it is attractive for investors. We believe that all of the offerings of different investment opportunities as well, with all of the new sites and destinations that are coming up in Saudi Arabia, with the current destinations that are available in Saudi Arabia, with the offerings that we have, whether these are cultural destinations, adventure, sea destinations, sun and sand destinations, all of these are showing the world that we are there. We have what it takes. We have the offerings. We have the and the governmental support, of course, with all of the incentives and all of the stimulus packages that we've seen recently. All of this is positioning us that we are a destination that is ready, open, and we're looking forward to having everyone coming to visit Saudi Arabia.
Sam, thank you very much indeed for the moment. Let's turn back to the Emirates then and Sharjah and welcome His Excellency Marwan bin Jassim Al Sakal, who is the Executive Chairman of the Sharjah Investment and Development Authority. It's interesting here with Sharjah because we have both the investment side of things and we have the tourism side of things, which we're going to come to in a second. But tell me, first of all, Marwan, what are the top tourism and hospitality destinations developed by Shuruk, by you, and what are the future tourism projects?
Assalamu alaikum first for everyone. It's very nice to see you all, Rajan, especially an excellent moderation till what I've seen currently. So what we have done in Sharjah is basically the Sharjah Investment and Development Authority, Shuruk, has emerged in developing different projects. And one of the sectors that we have focused on is the tourism sector. So what we try to do is to come up with projects that are different, that will add a lot to Sharjah. To a lot of people, Sharjah is unknown. So what we try to do is to create areas where people never visited, like the ecotourism. So we created this ecotourism plan of reviving the protected sites in Sharjah and making an opportunity for people actually to stay in those. So we opened one of the fascinating projects, which is called the Kingfisher Retreat, which sits in a protected site where you have turtle nesting in that site, sitting on the Indian Ocean, something that you'd never actually see. So you have the tented camps, something similar that you see in Africa, for example, but nothing that you see here. So when you think about a camp, you would think about a modern brick and mortar. Here it's a typical camp, but it's a concept of glamping. On the other hand, we went to the historical part of Sharjah, where in the middle of Sharjah, that goes back to the 1500s, the historical of Sharjah is called the heart of Sharjah. So we revived that area and created a whole master plan on a 15-year plan. And what we wanted to do is we wanted the opportunity for visitors to come and live in those old Emirati houses that were built in the 1860s. So what we took is one of the families of Sharjah is called Al Midfa family. We took their old houses that were actually refurbished, restored in a way, and we opened the Chedi Hotel. The Chedi, for the first time, comes to the UAE in Sharjah, and we called it the Chedi Al Bayt Hotel, which is Al Bayt is the Arabic word for the house. So you come there, it is like 10 different houses. Rooms are actually scattered within those 10 different houses. So you'd actually live in the old era, in the era of before oil that was discovered. On the other hand, Sharjah has archaeology that goes back to 130,000 years. So Paleolithic age, Neolithic age, all the way to the pre-Islamic age. So we created a concept called, we actually took this concept of the archaeology and created the tourism archaeological concept with an area called Mleha. So today, if you go to Mleha, it will take you to the history of man moving from Africa to Arabia, then to Asia, settling in Mleha. And so a visitor would come, would do some activities, whether it's quad bikes, ATVs, SUVs, or they would like to actually discover the caves. They would like to discover the different areas within Mleha. And the beautiful thing is that it's one of the most popular sites when you visit Sharjah. So beautiful red sand, and you have the fossil rock. So some of these concepts that we created within the Sharjah collection, within the Chedi, comes up with a different proposition for Sharjah, which created something nice. What we saw is even with COVID-19, even with the impact on tourism being affected, the Sharjah collection was thriving. The Sharjah collection was never hit by the demand and supply, because the issue of we're very limited. We have only 20 tents in the Kingfisher Retreat. We have 5 rooms in Al Faya Retreat. And Al Faya Retreat, for example, is this historical fuel pump station that was built in the 1960s. We converted that fuel pump station and a cafe or a cafeteria into a spa in the middle of the desert with only 5 rooms. So when you create something like this, with social distancing, physical distancing, trying to be far from each other, those places actually fit what you do. And actually, what the hotels have done through Misk, which is managing the Sharjah collection, they created a lot of criteria about checking on guests, making sure they're healthy, making sure that the food is in the right hygiene, making sure the whole parameters were set. So what we say is, Sharjah might be unknown to a lot of people, but it's a gem for tourist travelers. So you'd have mountains, you would have desert, you have Indian Ocean, you would have the Arabian Gulf, you have history, and you have archaeology. So there are many things to see, and you'd actually be living in a place where you are connected to Arabia, and something that you would actually, the history of the Arab world might be missed because people would think about the cosmopolitan city, the new modern buildings. But when you come to Sharjah, you would actually see the real history and meet people and get to know them. And with the new trends of being a solo traveler or eco traveler or a local experience, this actually fits what actually Shurukh does. So what we do is we open up the tourism industry and we say to investors, come, join us. We can jointly develop this sector and actually come with projects that will add a lot to Sharjah's offering.
So it's a good time now for an outsider, for a foreign investor, to start a new venture in Sharjah. You believe that?
And the good thing is that when you think about a tented lodge or a boutique retreat, the investment is not really big. We're talking about $10 million all the way to maybe $50 million, not those gigantic investment that people would actually not be willing. Now it's the best time to either buy a property that's available, that someone is suffering from, or build something that is so unique that you can actually open it as soon as possible and making sure that it fits this COVID-19 era, which is actually going to have an impact for the coming weeks, I would say, and months maybe.
Thank you again for the moment. Let's turn to the tourism side of the operations in Sharjah, specifically tourism, and His Excellency Khalid Jassim Al Midfa, who's the chairman of the Sharjah Commerce and Tourism Development Authority. Let me ask you, what's changed in the context of the COVID pandemic? How are you reassuring tourists about safety and hygiene in the country itself? And our people, are your tourism people, are they being trained to deal with the extra demands? I think we're just waiting for
Rajan, I think you can see me.
Oh, Khalid, sorry.
Yeah.
Not quite yet.
Yes, waiting for the host to allow me to start the camera. Yeah.
I think you may. There you are.
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Rajan, and the ATM for putting this together. It's really great to use such platforms to discuss and see the updates and what's really happening in the world through this difficult situation, the pandemic of COVID-19. We know that the past 3 months there were drastic or dramatic changes that took place and happened to the world. The tourism sector, of course, is one of the most vital sectors that many countries around the world rely as a main source of or a main contributor to the GDP. Here in the United Arab Emirates, the situation is that we have the tourism sector being contributing to around 12% on average to our gross domestic product. And it is very important to see really what happened over the past 3 months and how the behavior of the people changed and what was acceptable that is not acceptable now and might not be acceptable for the coming 1 or 2 years or so. And we have to be dynamic. I think it's a very important time and situation where we have to strengthen the relationship between the public and private sectors and work hand in hand, not only at a government level and at a country level, but as well working between the different countries. Now, as you see, the travel is not only domestic tourism. Domestic tourism is good. It has a good potential. Maybe phase 1 now of the opening of some of the markets and some activities, we will definitely be targeting the domestic markets because it's easier to travel. But there is some ambiguity, I would say, between the different countries. We don't know really the restrictions, the quarantine measures, other things that have not been announced yet. And I think it is very important to work together and put these measures internationally between different governments, the private sector being involved, seeing what is the best, what suits every country, and then come up with a clear picture for the people, for the traveler, with that gives them a certain level of comfort of when to travel, what to do, how to plan, and so on. For this phase now, talking about Sharjah, I agree totally with my colleagues who have been talking about certain areas with Dr. Talib, with Gerald, with Marwan, with Isam, with all my colleagues here. A lot has been said. The United Arab Emirates gives priority always to the people here, to the citizens, and to whoever is here in the UAE in terms of the healthcare that is provided, in terms of the safety measures. It is our utmost priority, I would say. Activities. A lot has been given to different industries, different sectors. The government has subsidized a few things, has waived many fines, many fees and penalties, and so on. A lot has been happening to support these companies and establishments to survive. The tourism sector has got its share as well. The people, the investors, the private companies, the establishments has been able to survive. We haven't seen closures of many numbers of hotels in Sharjah. There were just a few temporary closure requests for during the past 3 months, and many of them now are looking forward to reopening with certain measures. And it's very, very also important from what we see is to support our marketing campaign, the upcoming marketing campaigns, whether domestically or internationally, to do our homework, basically, to make sure that we have all the precautionary measures, the benchmarking done properly, to work very closely with the hospitality sector, with the tour operators, with the travel agencies, with the airports, because it's a whole ecosystem. You know, it's a 360 degree. We can't just take one element and say this is what will work for the tourism. Tourism requires everything to be put in place. So we hope that now phase two, or whether we call it phase one or phase two, which is the coming phase, the summer, to be a much better, to have much better results than what we've seen over the past 3 months. I think mainly it will be a domestic tourism due to these constraints internationally. The following phase will be a bit more relaxed in terms of travel and business. And the interesting thing, Rajan, that I would like also to point out here is that there has been a lot of technological development, and the world has seen so many different technologies, and this is one of them that we are using now. It is good, but at the same time, travel, I don't think anything can replace travel, because travel has always been physical. You have to travel yourself. When you meet people, when you network, when you experience a certain thing, it's different. It's not like what you can do over the phone or the tab or whatever. And I think, yeah, so that's, so it will go back. I think it will go back, and it will take some time, but travel will definitely go back.
You need the human connection, I think, is also what you're saying there. Thank you so much indeed, Khalid. Let's turn now to Ajman and His Excellency Saleh Al Ghaziri, who is the Director General for Ajman Tourism. Now, Ajman is clearly a much smaller emirate than the others, that particularly ones that we featured, but you definitely have some unique and attractive features. So could you tell me, what are your plans to boost tourism and investment in the post-COVID world?
Thank you, Rajan. Yes, the smallest in size, but maybe one of the biggest in heart as well. If you may allow me, before going into answering that question, just a couple of points on what were mentioned earlier on. I think the godfather of tourism, Dr. Talib Al-Rafai, mentioned something very important for us to all keep in mind is taking this on a positive side. Lately, all the news that comes out is negative news, or negativity that's being published in different types of medias. However, today we should look at this as a learning step. It's not the first crisis we've been through. It's not the first disaster that we've been through. We've been through quite a few in our lifetime, whether it was economical, whether it was natural. This might be the first real economy crisis that we actually face, where the previous economies were mainly paper economy, and the difference is with paper economies, it's related to whether it's the financial sector, the banks, the certain industries where the rest of your day-to-day work is still running. However, in the real economy crisis, this is where literally everything is put to a stop for a period of time. This real economy crash has definitely opened our eyes into things that we might have taken for granted. It has definitely allowed both the public sector and the private sector to redesign their operations according to what really needs to be looked at. My colleague Assam, His Excellency Assam mentioned a very important word earlier on, which is adaptation. How can we adapt to immediate changes? Some of the adaptation today is going into technologies and going into less interactive operations. Mm-hmm. Other adaptations are more in terms of looking into security, looking into health, making sure that we take all the measures that are required to ensure both safety of industry members and safety of the tourists that are going to go across the world to experience. my colleague also, Mr. Khalid al-Midfa, His Excellency Mr. Khalid al-Midfa, raised an issue of the technologies and how the physical movement will still remain. Definitely the physical interaction will be key to the industry. Tourism has always been a people's industry, for lack of a better word. And the interaction between the actual tourists and the experiences that they're going is vital. However, that doesn't mean that we can't start looking at using technology for operations. We also need to adapt our operations to make sure that any possible future crisis is put to a minimum. So I'll give you an example. Today, passports, physical passports, are required, and they're required whether it's to travel on airplanes and airports, whether it's to check in at hotels. That physical ID is required in, I don't want to say every destination, but in the majority of destinations. We've had the same issue previously in our lifetime when we had the physical signature. So when you had a document, you earlier on, and maybe our parents' lifetime, they actually needed to physically sign every single document. However, today with technology, signatures become electronic. Will we be able to digitalize certain processes similar to how we've digitalized signatures? Can the official IDs become electronic IDs? Do we still need to physically carry passports? Can we move into technologies that I can check into the airport using a digital solution? I can check into hotels without physically carrying any paperwork and giving it to someone else to use that data. These are some of the things that will fall under adaptation of the industry itself.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt, but we're just slightly running out of time. And I want to basically ask you this, which is, if you were positioning Ajman, if you were almost branding Ajman, selling Ajman as a potential investment destination, why would people want to invest in Ajman as opposed to other Emirates around you?
Sure. Let's talk about the UAE first. With the UAE, as mentioned again earlier on by Assam, the geographic location of the country is a perfect destination to link between East and West. Within the UAE, Ajman itself is in the heart of the country, linking between the Northern Emirates and the Southern Emirates, and also has borders with neighboring countries such as Oman. So in terms of geographic location and distribution, the network is very simple. With the size of the destination as well, the public sector decision-making is much easier as well, and quicker, and responds at a much faster pace than other countries or other destinations, meaning that if issues arise, resolutions can happen immediately. Changes can happen much quicker than in other more bureaucratic destinations, in addition to the destination being very cost effective. So if you compare cost of operations, cost of purchase, and other indirect costs, the destination is known for its competitiveness within that in that area.
Your Excellency, I'm hearing flexible, cost-effective, invest in Ajman is what I'm hearing. Thank you very much indeed for the time. Thank you, all of you. I wish we could have had longer on that session to have some interaction perhaps and swapping of ideas, but that will come for another time. So it is time now to move on to our next session, which is about repositioning your business for success, when the pandemic comes under control. We have got some really highly rated thinkers and analysts amongst this group, and I want to find out, when it comes to marketing and branding and persuading both uncertain investors and future tourists about the post-COVID world, what would you emphasize about this region, the Middle East? What would you say is its strengths and weaknesses? What needs to be improved upon? And do they even need a new direction, perhaps, in terms of branding? So I have with me, as I say, a selection of top experts. I'm going to go first to Haitham Mata, who has been an advisor to, I think, one of the Emirates, but is now the senior advisor to the Saudi Ministry of Tourism. Let me ask you then, is COVID-19, Haitham, is it a game changer?
Hi, Rajan, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
I was actually former CEO for Ras Al Khaimah's Tourism Development Authority, and now advising the Saudi Tourism Ministry. So yes, look, it certainly is a game changer. I think what I really wanted to emphasize on the fact that governments, our government bodies have been hard at work. And now it is time for tourism leaders to demonstrate their skills and capability and ability to feature their destinations. And if we reflect back on the 2008 recession, the recovery efforts there focused more on sports, events, concerts, booking these again, rebooking these activities. And I think this downturn, and as well as gradually moving from staycations to wide market visits, and I think this downturn here may have a different form of recovery. It's quite likely to be different. As we see now, it's going to depend more on shifting attitudes towards travel, attitudes towards public gathering, and obviously the ability to purchase. So taking these game changes, as you rightly said, into consideration and positioning destinations to focus on what the recovery efforts are going to be focused on, and how do we certainly change our communications to reflect that. We've seen different studies from Insight out here in the region, and we've seen also Al-Musafir out of Saudi, who's done quite a great study that gave fantastic results and feedback for us, insights, if you like, on what consumers are thinking about today. And Google has been fantastic in showing us what are the search trends today. And Amadeus gave us indications of who's looking at what countries and bookings into the region, whether it's the UAE or Saudi. We know people have been locked in for quite some time during these very difficult times. People are looking for opportunities to breathe. Yeah, people want to go out. They want to experience. But we know for sure that a very high percentage of people, close to 80%, are concerned about health and safety. So how do we make sure destinations are communicating their marketing efforts, right? And their comms efforts to ensure that safety is not only something that comes through a stamp or a certification, but actually demonstrated on the ground through the operations team. We've seen, and I mentioned this before in a previous panel, we've seen Hilton launch the Stay Clean. We've seen the IHG launch the Clean Promise. These are going to be competing brands. And as a consumer, how's it going to be different to me whether you've signed with Lysol or with Clorox, right? At the end of the day, I think the communications internally and ensuring that safety is managed throughout all the travel touch points, that is critical. Again, and really reflecting on the studies and the 2008 recession downturn versus this downturn and what people are thinking today. Up to 80% say they want to travel with friends and family. And that's really powerful. People just want to be with people they know and comfortable with, right? Up to 25% who also said they want to, 45% also say they want to be with friends and family. They want to be with small friends and small groups. Again, people they know and comfortable with. So the game changer again, Rajan, as you say, in communications and marketing is really now understanding and accepting the fact that group travel in general is going to take a while before it comes back. So how do we speak to the families today and position ourselves as destinations? Families who want to be out in nature. They want to be in outdoors. They want to be away from the crowded cities and somewhere they feel safe. How do we talk to them? And how do we make sure that this rise of solo traveler that we've seen even before COVID, that's going to continue even more now, right? How are we going to talk to the solo travelers and ensure not only destinations, but attractions? How can attractions start to think differently about the solo attractions, if you like, and offering solo experiences, right? Young couples as well, and small families. And that'll bring me quickly to another point I want to raise before I hand over to somebody else. I'm conscious I spoke too much, is the investment, right? When we think about investment today, how is this game changer going to impact the hotel, restaurant, and attraction designs of the future? I always say COVID is here with us to stay. It's going to be part of our ecosystem, the viral ecosystem. How do we manage to live with it, and how do we manage the expectations of the future consumers, whether they're Generation Z, I call them Generation C, right? COVID. So if this generation is going to continue the way it's going to be, and we need to manage the expectations of them going forward, then I believe hotel designs in the future, restaurant designs, attractions will certainly be impacted. And smart investors will start to think about that today and be the frontiers, if you want, or trailblazers of the investment industry.
Thank you very much for the time being. And just stick around because we may be coming back to you if we've got time. You mentioned group travel, and I think that particularly relates to Marcus Lee, Dr. Marcus Lee, who's the chairman of the Association of SMEs or Business Owners in China. Now, Marcus, Chinese travel is first out of the block. It has the biggest outbound market. We're talking about, I think, 150 million people. Would they be keen still to come to the Middle East, or would they be changing in the kind of tourists that are coming? Tell me some information.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Rajan. Thank you for the opportunity. I think China right now, last year was hitting about 160 million as the largest source market. And China actually is bouncing back right now. If you look at the last Labor holiday, which is a few weeks ago, we have about 115 million traveling internally. So the confidence is back. And then the latest informations about airlines, air traffic is the most important. About 8 major airlines in China is planning for June international flights. So things are beginning to pick up. And many destinations, hotel tour operators, what they do now, they do online training, like what we're doing now. Online training, a webinar, specialist program, online expo, you can name it. So to answer your questions, how is it still mass group traveling or is it FIT? I'm pretty sure this trend is moving from large group to smaller group, from mass to FIT, from large group, large coach to small car, and from a packed trip to a customized trip. So people are looking to be more flexible. They want something more flexible. They want to go to country they feel confident, trust, hygiene. I think many speakers talk about that. And also, I'm an advocate of a destination ready. Like your destination could be a bit more China ready right now, because Chinese, they are getting more sophisticated in what they want right now.
How would you say the Middle East is ready for that? How China ready is the Middle East then? How well are they doing? Will those flights that are coming in June, will they be coming to the Middle East?
I think if you look at how the countries opened up slowly, when whoever is in the list of the opening up, yes. I think the first batch of opening, if you are starting from neighboring country, for example, Korea, Thailand, those are the countries that is opening now. whether Middle East is opening, it depends on the bilateral two countries border if they are opening. So we are very watchful. And then I'm sure that one of the key indicator is the trust and how secure to go right now.
Okay, thank you again. To stay there for the time being. I also want to come back to you. Let's go to Ben Locke, who is the director, who's a director at Edelman. And I want to ask you how branding, in particular, which is your speciality, I suppose, Ben, is how can that reflect and influence consumer perception? It's all about perception, I suspect. And I think you have this thing called the Edelman Trust Barometer, which you can bring into this as well. Ben, hi.
Yeah, hi Rajan. Yes, obviously, as you know, at Edelman, we tend to talk a lot about trust. And it's funny, it's interesting to see how many people have mentioned trust today. So bear with me, I'm going to talk a little bit too much probably about trust. But in terms of branding, what is new in this awful phrase, a new normal? I think a few things strike me. I think, as I say, yeah, we've looked at trust over a number of years, 20 years now. And increasingly people grant their trust based on two distinct attributes: competence, i.e. delivering on a promise, and ethical behavior, doing the right thing, working to improve society. And we actually did some research sort of last month during the peak of the lockdown, and 71% of people agreed that if they perceive a brand that is putting profit before people, they will lose that trust in the brand forever. And there is enormous demand from brands to take action to help society challenges posed by COVID, from protecting the well-being of employees to shifting products and pricing to create a greater sense of community. So I think destination brands need to adjust their marketing to emphasize their role in solving some of these problems and making more affordable products to consumers. Don't forget, many of whom don't have the finances they had 3 months ago. But also, I hear a lot today about trust in terms of information. People want to know what they're doing, what brands are doing to allay my fears about COVID, or indeed any other issues that may impact my safety. Our research showed that 7 in 10 respondents are following corona news in the media at least once a day, with 33% saying they're checking several times a day. However, 74% are worried about fake news or misinformation. So they don't want platitudes about safety. They want tangible measures. How are you going to keep me safe if I come to your country? What happens if there is a second wave? What are my rights? That kind of thing. And the other thing I think is interesting is tone. There have been a little bit of point scoring statements and campaigns to try and intimate one place is safer than the other. And so in this cancel culture, it's never been more important to read the room and to really respect people's sensibilities. And what's another thing that I found fascinating during this lockdown period is people asking, are influencers and celebrities as important as they were before? People have less tolerance for more disposable culture than they did before. And in fact, I think it'd be very interesting to see how destination brands in the US will respond to recent events happening out there. The tone is absolutely critical, I think. But I think, sorry, Rajan, go on.
No. But I mean, very interesting you should mention the US. I mean, obviously that's a country that's going through, well, let's face it, turmoil, certainly in terms of global perception. But we're not dealing with them. We're dealing with the Middle East.
Yeah.
But you might be. But I think the point here is, I know there's an awful lot of idealism that seemed to come out as soon as the COVID pandemic hit, and it was about enjoying nature and
Yes.
loving the idea of this being a wonderful place, and people saying, right, from now on, this is a chance to reset. We're never going to go back to that old polluting way. And the new watchwords were green and clean. Now, I'm interested in knowing how much is that just kind of temporary idealism? How much should these destinations be thinking, well, actually, it's just not going to last very long. We can get back to our normal paths. Or how much is this going to be the new emphasis?
Well, I think the sort of temporary one is people are claustrophobic. They've been stuck in a house with their families or not for what seems like forever. And frankly, they're not going to want to go and sit on the beach, especially with the people they've been stuck in a room with for 3 months. They want to go out there and feel alive again. They want to be more at one with nature, be able to take stock of their lives away from their own urban lives. I mean, look in the UK and US and across Europe, actually, the amount of people who are looking to up sticks away from cities and go to live in the country. How long that lasts, I don't know. But also, I think many of us are more complacent. International travel has certainly been the norm for many of us. I'm from the UK and Europe is on my doorstep and the Middle East is a little bit of a further walk down the road. That is until it isn't. And I think a lot of us have jolted out of our sort of complacency And what was easily attainable a few months ago is now aspirational. You know, we look at those beaches or those beautiful cities in the Middle East, and we think, gosh, you know, that's something I took for granted. So I think people needed to create an urgency to see what I thought I could see at my leisure. I can't. But I think what is a bit of a longer term trend, and this was happening pre-COVID, is people used to ask, why should I come to your country? And increasingly people are saying, after a period of sustained reflection and reassessing their own self, they're asking, tell me why your country is relevant to what I aspire to be. Is that's that aspirational quality that I think most successful tourism brands convey. And tourists really want to go to places where they think they can be the best versions of themselves. So I think that's been exacerbated by COVID.
Just very quickly, do you think there's more empathy now between tourists and hosts, if you like, people who actually work in the tourism industry? And I'm talking about cleaners, and I'm talking about bartenders, people who don't necessarily do the highly skilled stuff. Is there going to be more of that? Let's share experiences.
Well, it is extraordinary, isn't it? That a few months ago, to call someone a shelf stucker was a bit of a derogatory term. Now they're heroes. So I think a lot of people have completely reframe their perception of people who provide food on the table or get them to A to B. And I think that is going to be a huge trend, that people will demand that the people that are enabling them to have a good time on holiday are looked after. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ben. Stick around, as I hope the others will do too. And in a sense, you can all kind of be up on screen if Camilla, you want to bring them up. Let's go now to Professor Dimitrios Bouhalis from the University of Bournemouth. Now, Dimitrios, you've been telling me that essentially you've been advising a lot of companies about whether to open or not to open. And if you do open, how do you open? I'm fascinated. Tell me about that.
Thank you, Rajan. Nice to see you again. I think it's really complicated. What has happened is quite complicated, and a lot of different companies will have to have different strategies depending on where they are, where their clientele is coming from. We keep hearing about domestic tourism. Of course, if you're China or US or Brazil or a big country, UK, you'll have a lot of domestic tourism. But if you've got a lot of islands like the Greek islands, or if you've got a lot of places that they're quite small, like the Seychelles, they'll find much more difficult to actually deal with domestic tourism in the short while. I think the COVID is giving us a huge challenge, and we're all trying really, really hard to reopen, reignite the tourism industry. It's the question, how can we do that safely for our guests, for our staff, for the local societies? And I think that will be a really difficult bet for the summer, if you like.
And what do you think? I mean, I asked Haitham whether this is a game changer in the long run, in terms of how tourism is perceived and how tourism has to react. Do you see that? Is it a game changer?
I think it's a game changer for different reasons. First of all, people have been locked into their homes for a long time, and they've actually discovered a whole range of different things. And one of the major things that they've discovered is that they can more or less do everything online. So digitization on steroids, really. And I think that brings us a huge range of opportunities and challenges. The opportunities are happening for those people who can actually help and provide value for people online and offline. And the danger lies with those people who are still operating only on the offline environment. Because what's happening now is that people can understand that they can visit the destination online on a virtual kind of situation. So they'll be looking for virtual reality. And then when they go there, they would have used so many tools that they'll be able to go into augmented reality. And I think the situation is that it's going to bring us huge opportunities to actually have a continuity of value through virtual and augmented reality, and much more importantly, providing information in real time to people when exactly they need it. And I think Ben and several colleagues were talking about a lot of information and fake information that's going around these days. So what consumers would like is to have immediate information that reflects the real-time situation in a place, that makes use of their safety and security, but at the same time it adds value to their time, because they are giving us their time and their money, but their time is more important.
And some people are talking about the kind of gradual, well, for a start, the reluctance of certain groups to go forward in the future, and that's for example, to take risks. I'm talking about older travelers, silver surfers as they're called. I'm also wondering about business. You know, now people know that we can communicate like this. Do you see business travel declining in the future? And very quickly, if you don't mind.
I think you've got two questions there. I think the leisure market I've segmented in 4 different things. I think the first group, which is probably about 25%, is seeding. They're just away from things. Then there's another group of almost 25% of people who have lost money or they've lost their income and they're not going to be able to travel. Then there's another fourth, which is really about smart travelers that they're waiting and see. And then there's a fourth group, which I call kamikaze. They'll travel anyway, they'll go anywhere. And I'm not sure that they're going to take precautions. So this is the leisure travel. Business travel is also coming into those kind of segments, if you like. But what is really important is to understand that we've learned to operate on a digital world and augmented world, but that is not going to stop people traveling. In actual fact, it will increase travel, because what's happening is that you can now connect with a lot of people from around the world, and the first thing that we too like to do is get together, have a drink, and enjoy a conversation face to face. The fact that we can connect like that does not take that need away. It actually, I think, exaggerates it, because we have got more things to talk about, and we have got to put things down on a napkin and plan the next project and the next conference.
It's about persuading the boss, though, to pay the money, to pay for your airfare, to go out to these places, to do that important work, I guess.
Well, it's all about value. If we add value out of this, the boss will pay. I think for this short period of time, the boss will be more concerned about the health and safety of their employees and the compensation claims that they can come as a result of that, and what insurance companies will be saying about this. So I think shorter term it will be really difficult. Longer term, I think will be much more effective. Those of us who operate in a digital world will operate in a much blended way and will operate on a much more smart way, if you like. And I think agility is the takeaway, really. Being able to use offline and online resources to be able to co-create experiences and co-create value for all the stakeholders that in the marketplace. I think that will be the critical aspect.
As ever, Dimitros, fascinated to hear you. All of you, actually, I could have you talking for half an hour, but we haven't got that time right now. And I know Marcus wants to come in with a couple of slides that we hadn't had time for yet. But I want to go to Jordan. Very importantly, I want to go to look at the situation there and talk to Dr. Abed Al-Razak Arabiat, who is the managing director of the Jordan Tourism Board. So, Abed, tell me, you have world famous attractions. You've got Petra, but I presume that these places are deserted right now. You had your best year, I think, prior to since the Arab Spring last year. It's a big part of your economy. How are you coping?
Hi, Rajan, and to everybody, and hope to see you physically next year in ATM in Dubai, and we see you all here in Jordan. Frankly speaking, yes, Jordan witnessed an increase and growth in the number of tourists in 2019, and we reached 1.3 million visitors to Petra last year due to the fact that we opened the spaces, and because of the low-cost carriers came to Jordan, and the user-generated content that we depended on in our marketing. So we put Jordan in the minds of the people. This pandemic actually changed the whole formula, and we are now working on a new recovery strategy. It's a agile and flexible strategy, and it's from 7 phases, starting from a confinement phase where all people are locked down at their homes until the vaccine is discovered. So, and we are monitoring the situation of the pandemic in several countries And accordingly, we modify and start to put Jordan and highlighting the positive content of Jordan. As JTB, as Jordan Tourism Board, in that stage, in this stage, we enhance our content. Actually, we came up with innovative ideas to enhance our contents by filming Jordan in virtual reality, 360 virtual tours, and engage this content with the local community so you can buy online. And you know, if you see Airbnb now experiences, you see you can register in class. So we adopt the same concept where we promoting Jordan and engage several experiences and classes and sessions, how to do, for example, the gastronomy, how to do the local food, and train people how to, and they register and set with a woman or a chef how to do the local food, and they can generate money. The first phase, actually, from government perspective, just to keep the workforce, where the government came up with several solutions to support the tourism industry by soft loans and to provide the liquidity to keep them alive, to survive, because when coming back, you need them to be there to provide the service. In this stage, I can tell you that we are in phase 4, where the restrictions are maybe in several countries, as we hear from the news, are opening their borders internally. In this phase, actually, we are working the domestic tourism, where we have a program called Ordunna Jannah. It's subsidized by the government by 40%, and where we can let people in Jordan to visit the hidden gems and all the experiences. The most important thing before that, just the workforce and all the supply chain in Jordan should be trained in the hygiene standards, the health measures, and we came up with SOPs for all the sector, starting from the airport, transportation, tour operators, guides, hotels, restaurants. And we formulate these SOPs to curriculums where it will be an online training, and we have to certify all these entities, the restaurants, the hotels, and all the supply chain to be certified to welcome and to serve the people. This is for this stage. Next stage, now we are looking into the green areas, where, you know, Jordan now, we as a model, we've been a success story in terms of how we manage the crisis through the crisis cell in Jordan, and you hear from the news that Jordan is a successful model how we contained the pandemic, and now Jordan being one of the countries that looking forward as a green free corona zone, especially in the southern part of Jordan, Aqaba, Wadi Rum, and Petra. We've been no cases, it's 0 cases. So now if you look to open green to green, we need to classify the countries, and we put certain parameters in terms of which countries that flatten their curve, and we are monitoring the countries that they issued their SOPs in the airports, the airlines, and accordingly we came up with the countries that in class A, let's say, that we can open without any restrictions. As you know all, the most important thing, the COVID-19 test, the PCR. So if you want to open with any country, you have to have the PCR test before 72 hours. And in the airports, you do the test in the airports. And this procedure, you need to facilitate and make for the passenger easy, that the flow in the airport and to enter the country in a very smooth way. So now we are in a stage to do the mass testing, where the passenger or the tourist will not feel any queuing and long time waiting in the airport.
I'm going to have to hurry up, yeah, I'm afraid, just because the time is running out. But I have to say, what you're talking about there is what every country is, I suspect, hoping for. And that the next conference that we have, I hope that these measures are all brought in. I've been to Wadi Rum, by the way. I don't think you have any problems with social or physical distancing there. It's a magnificent place, and I wish you the best of luck. And I'm sorry I had to cut you short. Equally, I'm afraid we haven't got time for the slides from Marcus. I apologize for that. As I said before, I wish we could have had longer, which each of these people, in fact, all of these people, doing this is a bit like being the driver of a car that is actually a driverless car, because you're never quite in charge. So I apologize for that. But it is time now to bring this conference to a close. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. And I will now turn to Dr. Taleb Rifai for some parting words. Taleb, good session. We'll just wait for him to appear. Ah, there you are.
Okay.
Hi, Taleb.
Hi, how are you?
So, some final words. What did we plug in first? Can you hear me, Taleb? Just to say, while Taleb's getting ready, after this, we have the breakout sessions, which will take place.
Got me by surprise a little bit.
I beg your pardon.
Got me by surprise. It's okay.
Clearly.
It's okay.
A really good conference. Thank you so much for still being here. But it's just some parting words I wanted from you, and I think we all want from you, about the future.
Thank you so much. How much time do I have?
A little, very, very short period of time, like a minute.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I think we've heard so many good things from many people. These examples are excellent examples. You can, from them, indicate how serious the Middle East is about tourism. It's very important, very refreshing to me, because the concept of tourism in the Middle East is not a concept that's very well accepted. To see countries like Saudi Arabia and the Emirates in particular embracing this concept, it's a very refreshing thought, truly, because for a period of time, nobody took tourism seriously. Now, I remember during the Icelandic ashes that took place a few years ago in Europe, where aviation stopped all over the continent, not only in Europe, all over the world. It was a wake-up call for everybody to say, wait a minute, aviation and tourism is very important. And I'm refreshed now to see that this is coming back again. There are many, many issues that we could talk about here, but I would like to just highlight a few things. One is adaptation. Adaptation is a very important concept that was mentioned many times. Our friends from Emirates, particularly Saudi Arabia. We also have the opportunities that are coming out of this. In this regard, I want to talk a little bit about domestic tourism, if you don't mind, Rajan.
Yep.
Domestic tourism is step number one, definitely, because we can't really bypass domestic tourism. And to me, this is an opportunity, not just a need. Of course, I know that domestic tourism is not something that brings in hard currency or puts in the balance of trade, but it keeps our facilities open, keeps our jobs alive, which is very, very important. Now, the more important thing is the principle of domestic tourism. As I said, it's connected with what I would like to say earlier, which is basically how serious do we take tourism? Can't take tourism seriously unless the people of the country know the value of tourism. People of the country will never know the value unless they experience their own country in tourism. No country should, in principle, be enjoyed by anybody before it's enjoyed by its own people. I don't like this. That's the sustainability issue as well, because it's not just sustainability, it's not just about the environment, it's about the social compact. A tourist that comes to our part of the world comes in like coming from Mars, like a god coming into us. We treat him like he knows more than we do. Our people should benefit from this more than anybody from outside first. And then when they come, then we come to the international tourism. International tourists would come to a country that's not just a beautiful country. The people know how beautiful it is. That's a very important issue. So domestic tourism is absolutely crucial. And I'm glad that everybody's coming. When I talk about domestic tourism, I talk about domestic and regional, of course, because in the Emirates, for example, Emirates and Saudi Arabia are one country. Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Oman. It's not nothing, including Jordan. Last thing I want to talk about is international tourism. And international tourism, as has been mentioned by Mr. Abdulrazak Arabiyat, who's a very good friend and doing a great job here in Jordan. We're trying to designate Aqaba as a corona-free zone, corona-resilient zone, we call it. But you do that, and then you choose another resilient zone that's next to it. For example, Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, across the Red Sea, across the Aqaba Gulf. Now, if you can come up with an agreement with the Egyptian government to connect these two together, that's a great thing. You don't have to have the whole country, not all of Egypt, not all of Jordan. I think our friends in Saudi Arabia could help us in this as well. I'm very, very excited to see all of them speaking the same language. We're all heading in the same direction. I can see lots of opportunities there. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Raja.
Thank you, Taleb. So just to wrap up then, basically, I think what you're saying there was imagination, cooperation is the order of the day. It's time for tourism in a way to give back to the world. And obviously tourism can contribute massively to recovery. I want to thank you all my contributors today, all brilliant, for joining us. It is time now for the Investors Speed Networking session.